Do you have something you know you need to tell your partner, but you avoid talking about it? Today we're going to talk about making difficult conversations much easier. I'm Dr. Christy Wise, and this is Life Sauce.
The difficult conversations suck. Why can't we just sweep them under the rug?
I know, so much easier, so much easier. Well, there's a few reasons why. One, because we're human beings and shit is going to happen. Shit is going to come up no matter what, right? If we talk about it before there's a breakdown, then it's something that we can talk about, we can decide before there's an upset. If we wait, then we're dealing with an entire breakdown, right?
Much easier to handle a problem when it's small and starting out than when it's grown into a full-blown crisis.
That's right. It's almost like, dealing with a spark instead of a fire.
So, what common difficult conversations do people typically struggle with?
Well, let's go through them. So, and this could vary from couple to couple because for some conversations, couples are very open and others, it's more difficult for people to talk about just major things. But let's talk about the first one, which is like boundaries. Mm-hmm. Boundaries, it's a hard conversation because it feels like we're rejecting our partner by saying, that's my boundary. You know what I mean? It feels kind of like somebody can feel like they're shut out.
So there's kind of two sides of this. I guess the first part we can talk about is how do you convey your boundaries in a way where you don't feel like you're shutting your partner out?
Well, I think that if you knew ahead of time, right, if you tell your partner ahead of time, I have a boundary. In the morning I like to meditate or I like to stretch, and that's really me time. So I would appreciate it if you'd give me 20 minutes by myself, and, that's sort of my boundary. Right?
So just clear and honest communication.
Yeah, clear and honest. The other is, where boundaries come up a lot is about sex. Right, where couples want to try new things, and that's definitely an important conversation to have before your partner is trying to do something that you don't want to do. Like, that's a boundary for you. It's not your thing. So again, you want to have that conversation before there's a breakdown.
And then on the other side of the boundary, when your partner does set boundaries with you, how do you make sure that you don't take that personally or make it feel like you're being shut out?
Well, I think understanding why the boundary is there, right? I think if we understand what's underneath the communication, it makes it much more palatable. Then we don't personalize it so much. If you say you need alone time after work because you like to cool your jets and whatever it is, and it has nothing to do with me, it's just that you took in a lot during the day, and, then it's like, oh, okay, that's what you need to do to transition to being home.
So coming back to clear communication, but also including the why the boundary needs to be set. I need this because X, Y, Z. It's not because of you. It's just because this is something I need to function properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then what about emotional needs?
This is definitely a hard conversation. Most people talk about their emotional needs when they're already upset, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't tell me I'm beautiful. I don't feel wanted. All the things when we're upset. So this is definitely a hard conversation to have when we're not already feeling it. But if you know that you're somebody who needs words of affirmation and compliments, or I want to feel beautiful. I want you to tell me it makes, more often and stuff like that. It is a hard conversation to have because then the other partner can often feel like what they're doing isn't providing for their partner. Like, oh, I'm not providing for you emotionally. That's a scary endeavor.
Mm-hmm. So would it be helpful if someone tried to sort of like release some of the pressure before, that tea kettle starts whistling? Like, hey, I'd appreciate it more if you do this. I'd appreciate it more if you, used your words to tell me you love me. I know you prefer to show people that you love them with actions, but I'm someone that needs words, rather than let it get to that point, like you said, where people tend to have this conversation when there's already an argument.
Yes, absolutely. And, even if it feels to you like it's needy or embarrassing or And sometimes we don't even know why we want what we want, you know. For instance, a couple that one wants emotional affection, you know, like touch and I want you to feel proud to be with me. Put your arm around me, hold my hand when we're in public, kiss me every now and then, come check in with me when we're at a party. Like I want to physically feel you, you know, want to connect with me. For what reason? I don't know. It's just what I want. That's okay.
Would you say it's more up to the person to communicate their boundaries to the partner, or for that partner to recognize what the preferences are for whoever they're with?
Yeah. Well, the latter is difficult because then it involves mind reading. Do you know? So I think that what a lot of couples do, by the way, is we test each other. Look, I'll bet he's only going to come and touch my hand once during this whole party. And then in the car on the way home, I'm going to be like, you don't touch my hands. And you know what I mean? Like it's like a setup. We set each other up. It would probably be more appropriate and yes, difficult to say, you know what, tonight I'm feeling a little, you know, insecure, or I'm just needing, like, I want to feel you there. Would you mind checking in with me just by a hand touch, or this is what I'm needing. Do you feel okay with that? And that way, you know, and I'm setting you up to succeed. This is what I'm asking you for.
And help it acknowledge the weirdness, even if it is just a random feeling. I feel like can make that even just sort of like soften it. Like, hey, this is kind of weird, but I just need to be touched more today.
Yes.
You know? There doesn't need to be a reason. Just communicate what you're feeling.
Right. And for the other person to not personalize it, like, what do you mean? I touch you all the time. I touch you more than any other guy. What? You what? You know, it's almost like that defensiveness. They're missing the gift in that I'm asking for more of you and you're rejecting me.
And then emotions are innately kind of messy. And having a solution that involves like clear communication with a very messy problem feels like there's going to be a lot of roadblocks. How are people supposed to navigate communicating something that's inherently messy in a way that's clear to their partner?
It's a beautiful question. Knowing that it's messy and knowing that as your partner, of course I would want you to feel loved. Of course it's not my job to judge and evaluate which emotions you should or shouldn't have, when you should or should have them. You know what I mean? That if you're making a request of me and it's something that I can do, then why wouldn't I want to make you feel good?
Trusting that your partner has your best interest in mind.
Totally. And that if you're feeling a certain way, I am here. I got your back. You know, I'm not going to make you feel stupid or insecure or silly. They're just your feelings. We feel our feels, and they're fluid. Tomorrow, I may not want you to touch me all day. You know what I mean? And that too I should communicate.
And then on the topic of trust, betrayals of trust, probably one of the more hurtful ones that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, this is definitely a hard conversation because it ordinarily comes out in a fight, betrayals of trust. And betrayals of trust can be anything from, you know, I trusted that you said you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. We did it. You weren't into it. Now, how do I trust your word? To, I see you flirting with her. You know what I mean? Like the range of betrayal of trust is massive. And it's a hard one to have ahead of time.
So if it's a hard one to have ahead of time, what are some good prompts or ways that people can try to nip it in the bud early before it turns into that big argument where someone, even if it was something that wasn't real, like maybe someone interpreted something as flirting, but they're just a friendly person, you know? So how does that get handled ahead of time before it turns into a fight in the car on the way home?
Yeah. Well, I think having conversations about, and this is the hard conversations, about things that, you know, I could feel triggered by. You know, here are some wounds, here are some childhood wounds. You know, I have fears of abandonment. And if I trust that you're going to be there for me, and I look around the room and you're gone, not that you've actually abandoned me, but how it might occur to me because of my triggers or my wounds is I could feel abandoned by that.
That makes a ton of sense. Providing context for emotions, I feel like, is probably one of the best ways to navigate how hard emotions can be to understand and interpret.
Yeah, and the distinction here is not to get mad at the partner like, you have to deal with your daddy issues. You know what I mean? It's like, look, we all have it. It's part of our fabric. those wounds. And the idea is to work with them and manage them and embrace them and hope that you've chosen a partner that's going to embrace them as well so that you feel safe rather than just not having it. You know what I mean? Because that's just not possible.
Yeah, so there needs to be an avoidance of an accusation from the person that feels betrayed, and also an avoidance of getting defensive or making it not your problem for the person who is being not accused, but like when their actions are interpreted as a betrayal of trust.
Yeah, that's right. Even trusting that you can ask for what you need. If you turn to your partner and you say, hey, would you do me a favor? It'd really mean a lot to me. I'm afraid of the dark. Would you mind? Whatever it is, would you mind X, Y, and Z? Trusting that your partner would, of course, want to make you feel safe or serve you. It doesn't cost time, doesn't cost money. Like, you know what I mean? Of course. And then to have it rejected could really create strife in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. So getting ahead of it seems to be a common theme with these before it gets too big.
Yeah.
But looking farther in the future, talking to your partner about what you want 5-10 years in the future might seem abstract and not worth talking about. But for certain things like, marriage, kids, whatever is happening in the future, how do you deal with those problems when they can seem so far away?
Yeah. And we do change our minds. Let's face it, right? You may decide in your early 20s that you don't want kids, and in your late 20s, you might. Who knows? You know what I mean? I think being open to that change, but conversating about it when the changes occur. But it is so important because things like, let's use kids as an example. Women are on a clock. They are. And that clock needs to be respected and honored because it's true. And imagine having somebody who you never have conversations about kids. You just assume that your partner is going to want kids, and then you find out, in your mid 30s or 40s that he doesn't want kids, or she doesn't want kids. Mm-hmm. The betrayal that would feel like I gave you my best years, I gave you my baby bearing years, like. Those are conversations, you know what I mean? We don't want to rob one another,
So would you recommend kind of keeping it as an ongoing conversation that doesn't really have a set end to it? That way, as those preferences and changes happen over time, there isn't like a big surprise. Like you said this last time we talked about it, even though there was like a 5-year gap. Uh-huh. That way, it doesn't come as like a surprise. You could sort of see maybe you both start on the same track and there's a little bit of a deviation, and a few years down the line, you realize you're going two completely different directions.
Yes, I love that. I love the idea of talking about how it's evolving. Especially when there are certain deal breakers. If somebody doesn't believe in the notion of marriage and somebody else wants to get married in a church, it's going to be a big issue. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And so those conversations, and they are difficult ones because we love each other and we don't want to lose each other. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, let's just not talk about that, and hopefully down the line, she'll change her mind or he'll change her mind. When the reality is,
And I feel like a compounding component of this would be like when you first get into a relationship and everything is so warm and bubbly and happy, you don't want to just artificially introduce difficulties.
Right.
If you've been dating someone for 3 months, it's starting to become serious at that point, or maybe it's not, depending on other people's interpretations. But investing, a year of your time into someone and then finding out that maybe they want to live in a completely different country. That's a deal breaker because you want to be close to family, or you don't have a job over there because the market's different. It's, even though it's uncomfortable to bring up when things are happy and bubbly at the beginning, that 3-month investment is going to hurt a lot less to question than a full year or even more.
Yes. Well, let's even talk about this one. This one comes up where there's lots of love and passion and all these things, and you feel as a young couple that you're going to take on the world together. One partner doesn't want to work. One partner has no interest in being out in the world and being productive. They very much expect to be taken care of and pampered and all these things. And the other partner in the beginning feels that that's romantic. Like, look how I'm taking care of you. Look what I can provide. But then the reality of life sets in, and it's like you believe that you're supposed to be taking on the world together, but now the burden falls on one. And you've already set a precedence for you don't have to work hard, or you don't have to, I'm going to bear the brunt of all of the working hard. The resentment that eventually will come to light is concerning.
And this one seems a bit more unique because I feel like a lot of the problems we talked about before get handled through clear communication. But this just seems like a fundamental difference in lifestyle.
Yeah.
Does that mean there's just a straight incompatibility, or is there something more to be said?
Well, and there's a different value. Like, when you value working hard and value achieving a lot or value a certain lifestyle, and your partner values just riding on your wings, you better be really clear if you're willing to live your life like that and not punish or resent or martyr yourself.
And then in a relationship where, let's say, both partners are working, one makes a lot more than the other. That creates a power imbalance, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
How does that get navigated?
Yeah, and that also needs to be, that's a hard conversation to have. Because, the reality is we want to celebrate our partner's wins but if it's making a person feel smaller or less than, or the power differential is there, then they need to be able to have conversations about then how to manage that, how to share it so that it's a we thing instead of a look what you're doing compared to what I'm doing. Like, it's not a comparison. You know what I mean? It's not a race. It's not a competition between the two of us.
And then while we're on the topic of money, let's go to a third scenario where they're both earning about the same. But one partner is conservative with their money. They don't spend a lot. They prefer to save it, invest in the future. The other one wants to have a lot of fun. They're a big spender. They work hard. They want to play hard right now.
Yep.
Both sides totally justifiable. How does that get navigated?
Yeah, so it has to be able to, that conversation has to take into both perspectives. Like, we're going to save a certain amount, we're going to play with a certain amount, knowing that it's not going to be all or nothing. We're not going to save everything, even though it'll take longer to buy a house. We're not going to spend everything. It means that we might not go on the vacation of our dreams, but we get to go play and have fun. There is going to be a middle ground, or the other way, we save everything for a year and then we spend everything we've got for a year. But whatever it is, it has to be mutually agreed upon and truly agreed upon, not like, fine, she wants to do this, but now we don't have it. You know what I mean? Like that undercurrent of resentment.
Not just trying to get out of the hard conversation.
That's exactly right, because this is all about the hard conversations.
It sounds pretty similar to, like we talked about earlier, with setting boundaries. The boundary could even be, I'm not comfortable spending that much money, or I'm not comfortable working this hard and not getting to enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Yeah, and let's even add, we can even combine these. Finances with betrayal of trust is a huge one. If I had a dime for every time a couple, caught each other doing something, I don't know what the word is, but lacks trust, spending money, saving money, tearing the tags off of a shirt. So when you see it,
being sneaky.
Yeah,
not
being sneaky.
Transparent or honest.
Where they just feel like, it's just little white lies. I got the shirt on sale after all. Those things are, they do impact trust. And even if your partner never knows it, and if you haven't listened to the other podcasts, you need to, it's pee in the bathwater. Even if somebody doesn't know that you've lied, you know you've lied. And it will absolutely change your behavior. 10,000%. People think that they don't get caught in a lie. It doesn't matter. They still know. It's still dirty.
It'll have an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And even bigger when people are moving money from accounts to accounts or buying property in your name fraudulently, doing things like that. It's a huge betrayal of trust.
And when all these things happen, where do they typically manifest themselves most in the relationships? Is it, when you get home from work? Is it in the bedroom? Is it over text when they just talk randomly throughout the day? When these betrayals of trust happen, where do they typically manifest themselves?
I would say in the everyday life. After work, you come home, couple seems ordinarily like nice with each other, but now there's a coldness, there's a distance. They don't
Something's
know.
off.
Yes. It's like little tiny chips away at the warmth and the we and the having fun. They sit in front of the TV, they watch their show, one goes to bed, one reads. Year after year goes by, it's like the disconnect becomes profound.
And then when these disconnects do enter sex life, I feel like because it is such a touchy topic, everything just sort of gets amplified, right?
Yeah.
The betrayal of trust or the emotions, because it kind of is the time when you're at your most vulnerable
Yeah.
with your partner.
Yep.
So given that it's such a volatile breeding ground of, intense emotions, how do people navigate setting boundaries in the bedroom, compromising, getting through the difficult conversations
Yeah.
regarding their sex life?
Yeah, because if not, then she's watching Seinfeld over your shoulder. Well, I mean, like if not, it becomes just horrible. I mean, you know what I mean? So I talk about doing a state of our union conversation. And I like to have these regularly. Like, if I had my way, if I had a magic wand, couples would have this conversation once a month. They would have a routine. They go sit on the beach, someplace not in their house, not in their bedroom, not near their kids, you know what I mean? Not in a loud place, but go sit and say, how is the state of our union? How are you feeling? How am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling a little disconnected. Why are you feeling disconnected? Well, to be honest, I have to tell you, I spent a little bit more money this month on Nordstrom, and I didn't really tell you about it, and I just want to apologize. I really love the shoes. They're so pretty. But I just want to apologize to you and clean that up with you. And he says, oh my God, I'm so glad you told me because I was feeling some kind of weird distance and I didn't know why. How else is the state of our union? Well, like literally, how are we doing? How are we
Trying to
doing?
change the setting to be more neutral, not so charged and
Totally.
ready to blow.
Because I tell you, if we don't, we wait till there's a huge blow up and we say, fuck this marriage, fuck you, fuck your mother, I hate your dog. Like, you know what I mean? The state of the union then is just,
Yeah.
total chaos.
Much harder to reel it back in than to just kind of keep it smooth the whole time.
That's right. And we do all that so we think we're avoiding conflict, which is ridiculous because then it's like magnified.
Just investing in it being harder later.
Yeah, and being able to have those conversations is investing in the relationship. People talk about going on date night. I got to tell you, if they knew, if we put a camera on people when they're in date night, they'd be horrified because date night could mean they go to the same restaurant, they both go on their phone, social media, take a picture of their plate, go date night, take a picture. There is no real connection. There's no real checking in, how we're doing, what's going on with you, You seemed a little off this week. Are you okay? Like, you know what I mean? Not talking about the kids, not talking about your mother, just us. What about us?
It's not enough to just go through the motions.
No. And so many people just go through, well, we do it. We go to date night. Oh, really?
So a lot of these things that we're talking about can be handled with prep work. But when something unexpected happens, sudden health scare or health issues, that innately is very stressful, especially if it's a serious health complication.
Yeah.
And that's going to, once again, charge the emotions and make it difficult to communicate. So how do difficult conversations around health problems get navigated?
That's a hard one, especially if you're dating, by the way, because then it's like, when do you bring that up? Because it's like, I want you to like me, even more so when you're in a relationship and that something comes up that you haven't said, like, sexually transmitted diseases is a big one. I managed my herpes and then we decided we wanted to get pregnant. Now I have to divulge, you know what I mean, that I have herpes because that changes vaginal births and all this other stuff. So having those conversations ahead of time, and that's a hard one, by the way, to be like, oh, I know we've been dating for 3 years and I never really told you this, so this is really hard and I'm going to come clean. I mean, it is so important because then it's like you can be mad for a few minutes, like, yes, I withheld it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Yes, I manage it. Yes, does it change the hard conversation of now you don't want to do oral on me because now what does that mean? Do we need to educate ourselves on that? Those are really hard conversations to have. But you can imagine how much harder it is when I'm in labor and delivery and they're doing a C-section because I have an outbreak and you never even knew. Like,
Yeah.
talk about a betrayal.
Seems to fit right into the theme of avoiding it now is just going to make it 100 times worse in the future.
Oh my God. Because then it's like, what else haven't you told me? Oh my God. Do you
So
know?
that also fits into another betrayal of trust.
Totally. And let's talk about sex for a minute since we're talking about babies. Because that is one of the hard conversations for couples. And in the beginning, everybody likes to seem, oh, I'm really playful. Yeah, I would do a threesome. Yeah, I would play with toys. Yeah. But to be honest, really truly honest, because I tell you what, how many times I've had a couple that says, yes, I'd have a threesome, and then there's a surprise person like, yay, surprise, and the other person feels completely like, what did you do? And that feels like a betrayal. I don't feel safe. I don't know this person. Why are you surprising me with this? You know what I mean? So talking about sex is really important. People don't want to sound vanilla. They don't want to sound, but there's nothing wrong with vanilla, especially if you enjoy vanilla. Like, you know what I mean? And as it changes, if you're willing to try something new, cool, then let's talk about it. But if you are somebody who doesn't want to do anal and you want to sound fun, so you say, yeah, I do anal. I mean, like, you could see where that would really fuck things up. No pun intended.
And that's also something that we didn't fully touch on earlier. We talked a lot about not telling your partner what you want, but then lying about what you don't want seems to be equally as bad, with the added fact that you lied to your partner.
Yeah.
Moving forward, defining what you want and what your partner wants in the relationship is also kind of tying into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Along with the boundaries. Is it important to stand your ground on what you define in your relationship if it's something really passionate, or is sort of rethinking, why is this important to me? Can I compromise more on this?
Yeah.
Something that people should explore too.
Yeah, it's great. Is it weird to talk to my son about sex? Sorry. That's okay. We've talked about worse, I'm sure. I think that being able to really figure out why it's important to you, and if you don't know why it's important to you, then being able to explore it with your partner could be really, really helpful. Like, what if you don't know why you want to have a threesome? You just feel like it's a bucket list item that you just have to fulfill. Do you know how, and your partner doesn't want to have a threesome, then how do you justify putting your partner through something like that if you don't really have a why?
Sort of like how we were talking about earlier, where if someone was just like, hey, I just feel like I need to be touched more physically, I need to be given more words of affirmation, those just need to be communicated. Your partner cannot read your mind no matter how well you know each other.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause problems if it's not communicated clearly and directly.
Yeah, and if something like, and we're talking about sex, if something like that comes up, it's like, okay, I'm willing to do this for you because it seems to be important. However, these are my boundaries. And to be able to really explore so that both people are feeling heard and included and respected, in that, then it seems like, okay, we can try this.
And then within the realm of defining parts of the relationship, are relationship goals very important? Saying we want, not necessarily with a certain time, but we know we want a house. We know we want kids or don't want kids. Is it important to have those specific things that unite people to work together rather than just, we're pretty much as close friends that have sex?
Yeah, it is, because, there's so much room for interpretation or misunderstanding. If you think that you guys are together, and this happens, you think you're exclusive. I mean, I don't want to sleep with more than one person at a time, so I'm feeling like we're exclusive, but we don't ever have that hard conversation, and you're out having sex with people. You could see where that would lead to a breakdown and a lot of hurt. But to be able to say, let's define this. Are we exclusive? Are we monogamous? Are we, whatever it is, even in the future? Like, are we just living together for the last 12 years? Are we You know what I mean? Are we just hanging out? Are we roommates that have sex? Like, being able to define it, I think, gives people parameters and by the way, safety.
Context seeming very
Context.
important again.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it can change. It can evolve, and that's cool too.
And when these things do go wrong, we talked a little bit in a previous episode about arguments and fighting.
Yeah.
Setting rules for arguments.
Ooh.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, we can definitely do that, And I suggest that people do this before there's an argument. And I know that after an argument, things come up like, hey, that thing you did, let's not ever do that again, But it is important to say, I grew up in my family. I always say I'm half Italian, half Jewish. The Italian side's loud, loud, loud. And so there might be some yelling. I grew up with yelling, and you say, I'm not really comfortable with being yelled at. And I say to you, okay, so if you notice that I'm raising my voice, it would be an okay time for you to say to me, you know what, let's kind of bring it down a little bit. Let's take 10 minutes because I can't hear you when you yell at me. And that signals me to know that you can no longer hear because I'm too, elevated.
And it's important to bring these things up early before an argument when things are calm and people are more receptive to feedback rather than, especially not during an argument, because people don't typically listen that well during arguments because of the emotions and the situation is just scary.
Yeah. Even conversations, we hate to talk about our exes, but guess what? There's a lot to be learned from our exes. I want to know from my partner, what did you do right? What did you do wrong when you guys fought? How did you usually handle it? Oh, I'm a runner. I am a runner. I'm out. Eject. Bow. You know what I mean? So if you feel that, or I feel like I'm on the verge of ejecting, I'm going to say, you know what? We need to bring it down a little bit because I'm feeling that fight or flight. I'm about to hit the road on this. And this seems to be my pattern. I'm going to work on not ejecting, but I'm feeling that, and you need to know that about me.
And especially so the partner can know that way if they do something that was similar to an ex, it's not getting compounded onto the, oh my God, this is happening to me again. Why do all my, boyfriends or girlfriends always do this one specific thing?
Totally.
It's separate, discrete instances. They're not adding on to each other. Maybe that needs to be communicated more. That way, the person who's doing whatever specific action it is, maybe not holding the car door open.
Right.
If every time you forget to hold the car door open, if it reminds your partner of their ex, without even realizing it, you're putting a bunch of points into the negative emotions jar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to say it. That's exactly right. That's why it is important, even though it's uncomfortable. Again, they're hard conversations to have, but they're so, let's learn from our mistakes. Let's set each other up to succeed here.
And another random one that seems a little, out of left field, but is equally important in the house is dividing up chores that are done around the house.
Oh, God, that's huge. It sounds so silly, but it's huge. You and I always joke about the toilet bowl.
Yes.
It's an issue. It's an issue, especially with lots of boys in the house, right? That's a hard conversation to have, for sure.
Not one you want to bring up.
Not one I want to bring up. One I shouldn't bring up? Or is that what you're saying?
Well, we're saying this whole time is we should be bringing
Yeah,
up,
we
and
should
stop avoiding this conversation.
Yeah, we should stop avoiding this conversation. So chores, that is an important one because it does lead to discomfort, animosity, things like that. A big one also is the way I clean and the way somebody else cleans might be different. And so I need to at least explain to you that when we clean, this makes me feel good. I want to know that the floor is clean. Really.
So much like the relationship goals and the personal boundaries, standards need to be set.
Right. And if I know that you need, I always joke about my closet being color coded. It just soothes me, having all the colors and I remember when you guys were little and I would say to you, if you're going to put things away, put the red and the pink and you were so sweet. You didn't make fun of me. You just put the things in the right color coding because for whatever reason, it soothed the hell out of me. That's so sweet.
Do you think that part of chores being a difficult conversation is that they do kind of seem silly or trivial?
Yes. Yeah, that people get hard on each other like, God, she even wants me to wipe down the sink. it's a sink for a reason. It's wet. Or, you know what I mean? Like it, and instead of going, I don't know what the reason for this is. It seems to soothe you if I take the crumbs out of the toaster, or don't leave shit stains in the toilet ring or whatever it is. So I'm going to honor that for you. Or I don't seem to pay attention to this at all. So how about I do the chore that I pay attention to and you be in charge of those things?
It almost seems like a good practice for dealing with emotions, because you may not understand how the other person is feeling. You may not understand why a sink needs to be dry on the inside, but you just can practice knowing my partner wants this. It's not too much extra effort to do that.
Right.
And it's good partner practice to address the needs of whoever you're with.
That's right. And it's a matter of respect too. I love you. I respect you. This makes you feel good. Fuck, I can dry the sink. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if I hang the red in the red shirts? I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, who, and when we do that, our partner is so much more likely to return the favor. You know, like when we're generous with one another, we're generous. When we're stingy, it breeds stinginess.
Like a feedback loop of, you can either make it of positive emotions and interactions where you're helping each other, it's a mutually beneficial relationship, things are going great, or you're both kind of being selfish and taking away the shared resources. Like, I'm hoarding, I want more, I don't want to give up my standards, I don't want to do the things they ask me to do because I find them silly, and that's just going to lead into a negative feedback loop instead.
That's exactly right. And over time, it's like, and then you could imagine years of that, and then you go into the office and there's some young girl that's happy to see you and making coffee the way you want and makes you feel like $1,000,000. Why wouldn't you want to be attracted to that or feel that? You know what do you see where I'm going
People
with
are
that?
going to find what they want from an external source if they're not getting it at home.
That's right. That's right. And then wonder what happened.
So I think today we've probably learned that the most important thing about difficult conversations is getting ahead of them.
Yeah.
Talking
and having
about them frequently in a neutral conversation where the goal is to be understood and to understand.
Yes.
It's important to address things that are important to you and not just roll over or sweep it under the rug, because it makes the present easier, because it's just going to make the future that much more difficult.
That's right. Just fucking do it.
I think that's going to wrap it up for today. then.
Fabulous. For more information or to submit a question, go to our website, lifesauce.com. That's life-sauce.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for joining us.